There's growing fear among top national security officials that Russia may interfere in this year's midterm elections, according to new CNN reporting. One specific concern: the Kremlin will exploit the current divisions in America over election integrity to sow more doubt in the security of our voting systems. Joining me now to discuss is Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, welcome back. Let's start here with right now what these five officials say is a possible scenario. It's a hypothetical. Have you seen any indication, any evidence that it's more than just hypothetical?
Well, what I see right now, Victor, is comparing 2016, where we were a combustible country and Russia used disinformation, hacking and dumping, scanning of election systems, and they were quite effective in trying to help their preferred candidate, Donald Trump. And then I look at the upcoming midterm election, where we're even more combustible. We're coming off of an insurrection. We are helping Ukraine stay in the fight against Russia. So not only do they have the capabilities, they've always had that, we have become more combustible, and they have more of a motive, knowing what we're doing to them in Ukraine. And so without going into the intelligence I'm seeing, all of those factors make us very, very vulnerable to Russia, trying to change the outcome of this upcoming election.
There's one scenario specifically the experts talk about. They lay out, again, a hypothetical involving the staging of hacks of local elections offices designed to be found out, designed to be caught, and that would use that to feed conspiracies about election fraud. I know you introduced some new legislation about cybersecurity. How vulnerable are the election systems, the computer systems of these elections offices broadly?
Very vulnerable, Victor, and the Russians know that, and that's why we've seen them in the past try and get into these systems. But now when you layer on top of that a Republican Party that refuses to accept the outcome of the last election, and the Texas Republican Party just over the weekend, in their party platform, they're trying to put in place that Joe Biden is not the legitimate winner. So if you can have the Russians go into voting systems, in New Mexico, you have a board there that is trying to throw out any Dominion election system result in a recent election. Put on top of that the Russians going in to those systems, and you could create chaos in our elections. Now, the response I hope the Russians are met with is that the Biden administration will call them out immediately. That was very effective in putting the coalition together in Europe to go after Russia for what they did in Ukraine by showing the exquisite intelligence we have, outing it before the Russians are able to actually act, so that you call them out on that and stop them in their tracks. We have to learn from 2016, Victor. We didn't do that. We let the Russians hack and dump and launch the disinformation campaign, and we never called them out, and Donald Trump benefited from that. This time, we have to go on offense and put the Russians on their heels.
All right, let's talk about the 1-6 committee. And former President Trump has said several times, put onto his social media, that he wants equal time to talk about what he says is the other side of the 2020 election story. You said you'd be open to that if he goes under oath. But I mean, he continues to at least suggest that he believes that he won the 2020 election. He did not. Would even that be valuable for the committee to hear from the former president?
Well, it would be valuable to show that he's a liar, and that everything he has said publicly has been repudiated by the facts that they put forward. And Victor, during the second impeachment trial, we made this offer to the former president. We said, come on down. If you are truly innocent, nothing would stop you. You would crawl through glass and walk through fire to come tell the country that you did not incite and aim this insurrection at the Capitol. He didn't do that. Here he's asking for equal time, and the commissioners would love, I'm sure, to hear from the president. But everyone around him, most people like Mark Meadows and others, keep saying, I'll see you in court, again, revealing a consciousness of guilt. Donald Trump doesn't want equal time. He just wants to make a mockery of this process. But the evidence so far overwhelmingly has shown that Donald Trump assembled the mob, aimed the mob, and incited the mob as they violently tried to overthrow the Capitol, and he had no legal basis for any belief that he spewed to the mob.
Let me ask you about President Biden's trip to Saudi Arabia coming up next month. We heard from the president today. He said his meetings will include the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. His energy secretary says her understanding is that they will be meeting one-on-one, but still waiting for some clarity on that. After the killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018, you wrote an op-ed for Newsweek. The title, "America Doesn't Need Allies Who Torture and Murder Journalists." You called for President Trump then to pull the Treasury Secretary from a conference in Riyadh, and you wrote this: "America must not validate the Riyadh regime with our presence while this vile situation remains unsolved." So should President Biden be meeting or having a meeting that includes MBS?
I don't like it. I wouldn't do it if I was president, but I respect that we're in a global inflation. Energy prices are soaring worldwide. And the Saudis, control a lot of the oil, and he has to do what's best for the American people and our allies in Europe. I think you can do that without meeting with the Crown Prince, but I'll leave it to President Biden. But I'll tell you, I don't like it, and I think American exceptionalism was on display when Vladimir Putin went into Ukraine, and we stitched together an alliance of not just Europe and NATO, but Japan, Australia, and others to push back on Russia. And so I think relying on our, good faith alliances and people, who are honorable and show moral integrity is more important to take on these crises than an unscrupulous actor like the Crown Prince. And if the president's going to meet with him, Victor, I hope that we can make some progress on accountability for what happened to Jamal Khashoggi.
All right, Congressman Eric Swalwell, always good to have you. Thank you.